Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers. James and Justin here, your favorite spiritual analysts on all things culturally relevant, helping you to connect with this divine yet somewhat peculiar reality we all find ourselves in. That was way too long-winded.
No, that was fine. That was perfect.
We're taking a look at another Dharma Speaks video. This one is entitled A Walk Through the Upanishads.
Let's go.
If we look at the Dharmic traditions of India compared with the Judeo-Christian religions, there are stark contrasts in certain theological principles. Western religion has clear distinctions between God, man, and the world. Hinduism and other Dharmic religions, however, hold philosophies that see some kind of unity between the three. But how has this important distinction come about? From a scriptural perspective, this can all be traced back to perhaps the most ancient and profoundest text in human history, the Upanishads. Whilst many Hindus might have heard of them, few have really engaged with them in any meaningful way. As the great philosopher Schopenhauer declared, the Upanishads are the most elevated and satisfying read possible in the world. It has been the solace of my life and will be the solace of my death. Many other Western thinkers have echoed the same. Whether you are a Vaishnava Hindu, a Shaivite, a Shakta, or even a Buddhist or Sikh, the Upanishads would have undoubtedly played some role in shaping your philosophy. In this video,
That's kind of an interesting point there that it kind of transcends faiths, which is really fascinating because I know in the Abrahamic religions it's not like a popular practice to be like, for Christians to be like, oh right, we're going to read the Quran today or something like that.
Heck no.
Like, yeah, and I guess Christianity kind of reads the Torah because it's part of the same. But I'm sure, like in Judaism, are they reading the New Testament? Like,
I
probably,
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see the ultimate point that you're making is it's not really common to any organized religion to like investigate other religions, which is, maybe we'll see a shift there.
Yeah.
we'll walk through some of the statements of the Upanishads and see what conclusions they come to. First of all, these texts are found at the end of each of the four Vedas. They are known as Vedanta, which means the end or rather the conclusion of Vedic teaching. While the earlier parts of the Veda are dedicated to ritual practice, the Upanishads are dedicated to gaining spiritual knowledge. They do not put down rules we should follow, but rather they lay down universal truths that govern all of life. There are 10, perhaps 12 principal Upanishads, with many other authored much later. The main subject discussed is metaphysics, which means the foundational principles of reality. They investigate questions such as, who am I, and what is the highest principle that exists? The Upanishads start with a blank slate. They take nothing for granted and come to conclusions based on the revelation of ancient seers. These teachings often play out through conversations, debates, and stories. If we turn to the Kena Upanishad, a disciple asks his master, commanded and directed by whom does the mind go towards its objects? Commanded by whom does this life force move? At whose will do men utter speech? What power directs the eye and the ear? The disciple is asking, how is it that thoughts can arise in our mind? How are we able to move and talk? What is making this thing called life even possible? This question cuts straight to the fundamentals. Well before Western scientists, the rishis of India were already investigating the nature of consciousness. In another Upanishad, known as the Brihad Aranyaka, it is answered in this way. You cannot see the seer of seeing. You cannot hear the hearer of hearing. You cannot think of the thinker of thinking. You cannot know the knower of knowing. This is yourself that is within all. Everything else but this is perishable. In other
Okay. So it's just, I don't know really what to say about that, but there's some significant thing here, I heard a quote recently that was something like, all philosophy prior to awakening is cringe, And I've been chewing on that, man. I've been chewing on because we philosophize here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I am Lord Cringe in many ways. But it gets me to thinking about in being in this realm of like with your intellect being like the thinker. Who's the thinker that thinks? Who's the one that sees? Like you, and part of that same quote, which was from actualize.org.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I got that quote from on the forum there. Part of that same quote was something to do with, you know, if you fail at awakening in all your philosophy, you're sort of like doomed to be lost in the labyrinth of your own mind.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying here is, where does the rubber meet the road here? Where is it like, you know, because I've meditated for long times and then been like, okay, I can get this sort of third person perspective of my ego and I feel sort of detached and da 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 da. But it's another thing when somebody's like, you ask them about God and they start crying. They're like, you'll know one day. Or whatever, like they just no words suffice for them. There's no philosophy. You're philosophizing at me. They hit you with a stick because you're so stupid for even asking that. You know, it's like, well, what the... And maybe that's just where practice comes in. It's like you have to... You can only philosophize so long before get your ass to the place and meditate and get your ass to the yoga studio and curl yourself into a pretzel and, you know, restrict your diet and abstain from all the vices. That's the only way you're going to get there. And sometimes even you have to, you know, find extra means to shift your consciousness.
Well, the struggle's right in that comment below there. It says, in other words, consciousness is not a product of this material world. Think about that. Most people struggle with that because the raw material world that they experience stands out above everything else, rather than this like hidden thing that's behind the scenes, and that's the thing that you're trying to like get to. But like it's like brain, it's like consciousness we feel happens within brains, but this is saying that no, it doesn't happen within brains. It doesn't happen within neurons firing. It's actually outside of that.
So what is the problem here? Is it that, because like I said, it's not uncommon to do enough meditation that you're like, okay, I see the ego. In fact, the ego's quieted down because I see it so clearly and it's got nowhere to hide and it quiets down. And all that's left is what's there. There's not anything there. Is it that the person is so buried in trauma and ego and that sorry, bro, you got cursed. You got cursed with the trickiest ego in the world because there is a wellspring of light and beauty and shining light there. And you just never get lost forever. Ha ha. You know, like that's effed up. That's not even that person's fault anymore. That's like I don't know where you put the blame for that. But some people come back and like, I mean, let me cut to the chase here. Sometimes it's people that have like done a lot of psychedelics.
Yeah.
So to everybody else, you could say they hallucinated and they would go, well, if you wouldn't say that. It's like, you know, man, I've had some experiences in my life. I've had some things where I walked away and I said, that was otherworldly. But as time goes on and you think about the way brain chemistry works and your senses and your sense of reality, I mean, it's not like there isn't an argument to be made that it was a hallucination or something.
Yeah.
And they're like, they just laugh. Okay, well, what is that? Why would it be so hidden and not common for everybody to see? And where does it go from, yes, meditation is a useful tool to reduce your depression, increase your self-control, increase your discipline, improve your way of life, and on top of it, actually like get in touch with the peace of being. Like, you know, you're more in touch with like swallowing and breath, and wow, it feels really good to actually exist. Yeah. Some people, that's not the same thing as, it's infinite, it's infinite. And whatever the thing is that gets to that, if somebody's discovered it, like, sorry, you have to now forfeit your life. You got to like walk around in making people see that.
Yeah, but well, some choose to do that. It appears anyway. Some make that choice, and then others choose to go off into solitude. But a hard truth that might like.
Well, sorry, that puts your claim. That makes your claim like, you know. I'm sorry if that's cringy, but that makes your claim confusing and like, I don't know. You might want to question whether or not you're just being arrogant and lost in a labyrinth.
Yeah,
you know.
But another hard truth to try and like, and this is something I try to come to grips with, is that maybe at least in this life, it might not be for everyone. Everyone might not get it.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yes.
And that's like a brutal truth, especially if you're one of those people who wants it really badly. All I want to do is just have that thing that you're talking about.
I'm not even in that place. I'm not even in a place where I want it that bad. And everything you said is legitimate.
Yeah.
It's just, that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is, I think that there are people that are walking around like this and don't feel shit. They ain't in touch with jack shit. It's all an act.
Yeah.
And then I think that there's people that come and claim that they're like, that they went to the center of the universe. And they're like, I will forever take life a little less seriously because what do you want from me? I met God. I'm God. It's all one thing. I met it. You have to experience. There's no word suffice for it.
Yeah.
There's a difference there.
Yeah.
Damn it. And what are we screwing around for when we know that there's a significant answer? It's like, just get that answer. And then what happens? What is the market difference for all to see? The universe collapses on itself?
Yeah. I don't know.
You don't know. You're just in cringe world. Cringily philosophizing until you know.
In other words, consciousness is not a product of this material world. It cannot be perceived by the senses of the body, yet it is the thing by which the senses themselves function. Whereas some scientists would advocate that the brain might somehow create consciousness, the Upanishads emphatically declare that consciousness is not material. It resides in an altogether different space, untouched by this world. It is the unchanging aspect of who we are. It is the self, or the Atman. But how can we perceive our true self? What are the barriers that prevent this realization? The Taittiriya Upanishad takes us on a path of inquiry to discover that eternal part of who we are. The Annamaya Kosha forms our gross, physical body, which is constantly changing and decaying. Beneath this is prana, or life force, which governs our energy. Going further, there is the Manomaya Kosha, or our mind with its constant stream of thoughts. Deeper still is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which allows us to understand and discriminate in the world. But even beneath this, there is a realm which is blissful and full of boundless joy. This is the Anandamaya Kosha, and it is around here where we can find the Atman. The 5 koshas make us aware that beyond all the levels of who we are, there is something foundational which is witnessing, knowing, and experiencing everything. But as the sage Yajnavalkya points out, this Atman is not limited to one body. He described in the Brihadaranyaka, as a caterpillar, after reaching a blade of grass, approaches another, so too does this self, after having thrown off this body, it draws itself to another. What a man turns out to be depends on his actions. If he is good, he will turn into something good. If he is bad, he will turn into something bad. Many scholars state that this is the first ever reference to reincarnation and karma. Thousands of years ago, the rishis declared that the self, which is pure consciousness, is encased in material reality. Just like the caterpillar, it moves from one body to another, and its fate in the next life is decided by the deeds that have been done. These 3 major doctrines, the divinity of the self, reincarnation, and karma, are what define Hinduism as a whole. But there is more. Now that we understand who we are, what about this world around? Amongst all this creation, what is the ultimate thing behind it? The Chandogya Upanishad states, all of this is Brahman. Everything comes from Brahman. Everything goes back to Brahman. And everything is sustained by Brahman. The ultimate principle, according to the Upanishads, is literally everything. It is the source and the ground upon which all of creation exists. The world full of people, animals, trees, and other living beings, all of it is Brahman. The various Upanishads state, Brahman is Sat, existence which is unchanging. It is Chit, or consciousness, and it is Ananda, infinitely blissful. But if Brahman is everything, then where exactly do we as the Atman fit in? In the Chandogya Upanishad, there is the story of Svetaketu. Having returned from 12 years of education and filled with some pride, he meets his father Uddalaka Aruni. Keen to educate his son, Uddalaka asks him to bring a fruit from a banyan tree. Then he instructs him to cut it and asks, "What do you see?" "Exquisitely small seeds." "Can you break one of them?" "I have split it." "Then what do you see?" "I see nothing at all." "Son, can this marvel of a tree come out of nothing? It is just that you are not able to see the subtle essence in the seed from which this banyan tree has sprung. That which is the subtle essence is the bedrock of all existence. Dear boy, that which is the finest essence the whole universe has as its soul. That is reality. That is the self. And Tattvamasi, that is you, Svertaketu. Uddalaka Aruni is stating that this Brahman, which underpins everything, is actually us. Our essential nature as the self is the same thing that pervades all creation. Or to put it more precisely, Atman is Brahman. But the Upanishadic statements which declare the unity of Atman and Brahman are just one side of the coin. There are numerous statements which make it clear that there are differences between the two. The Mundaka Upanishad describes two birds sitting in a tree. One bird eats the sweet fruit, the other looks on without eating. Similarly, on this same tree, the soul too is drowned, it is perplexed, and it is grieving owing to helplessness. But when he sees the other, the Lord who is worshipped in all his glory, he becomes absolved from grief. In this scene, we as the Atman are the bird that is attached to this world, and alongside us is the Isha or Lord. It states that by knowing the Lord, we can be free from suffering. Despite the clear unity in other verses, the two birds show a clear difference between Atman and Brahman.
That's a theme that comes up a lot, is the being free from suffering.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, man? What do you think of this idea?
Well, it's just a belief until it actually happens, right? And there's a whole lot about like getting into the practices and doing all the stuff that can help you arrive here. And it's like, you know, like I'm a middle-aged man. I'm I'm 43. It's like, is there still time? Is there like still time? Do you have to like start when you're 5? You know, like you know, and then, you know, maybe that's part of the whole reincarnation deal. It's like, you know, I wonder if Hindus look at the West and they're like, maybe in 500 years they'll start picking it up. And then it also made me think about like the New Age movement for some reason. And I was thinking about like spirituality in the West that kind of like adopts a lot of these philosophies, a lot of these ideas. Like, what do Hindus think about the New Age movement? What do you think about like how like it's been kind of like a lot of the philosophies have been taken, and maybe the New Age movement sees it as like an evolution in some of these old teachings? And is that something that's frowned upon out in the East? They're like, oh, I don't like what the West is doing with you know, our culture.
Yeah,
I don't
good
like,
question.
You know, like I'm curious. Or is there room there for like the West and the East to kind of like evolve these ideas and unite into something a little bit different than what we all thought it was, and turn into something beautiful that maybe helps humanity get to a point where we can all attain some of these things a little bit easier?
Yeah, like right. What I suppose what I mean, that was all interesting stuff, but I suppose what I mean is kind of like, is the absence of suffering what you should be after? Is the ending of suffering? Like, going to the gym is not necessarily evil. And going to the gym and getting a good workout sometimes incorporates like, ooh, that burns. Ooh, that like does not feel like, I would not equate that with pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's weird to me when this thing is like dangled before you of like, it's the end of suffering. It's like, who says I even don't want to suffer no more?
Yeah.
You know, the fool hit you with a stick again. Ah! Yeah. I'm not saying I don't want to suffer.
Yeah.
I'm saying, are you giving suffering its fair shake?
Yeah.
Suffering is, but some of these things, they sneak it in there, and then the reason you want this is because the end of suffering. If the secret answer is like, okay, you can't just tell people that the truth is what they're going to be is okay with suffering. They won't buy it. I'm like, then you're a liar. Excuse my language. But anyway, that's my own, you know, suffering bubbling up to the surface and, you know, venting and being a viper. I should keep that in check.
Yeah. All right.
Brahman. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad is even clearer. There are two. One, the knowing who is the Lord, and the other ignorant who is the soul. There is the ruler and the ruled. It is these apparently conflicting statements that make the Upanishads open to interpretation. Some advocate an absolute unity between man, God, and the world, whereas others put forward a clear difference. But there are some verses that seem to reconcile these two opposing views. In the Brihadaranyaka, Sage Yajnavalkya declares that he who dwells in this earth and within the earth, whom the earth does not know, whose body the earth is, he is also yourself, the ruler within and immortal. Yajnavalkya explains that creation and the various souls are the body of Brahman, and Brahman itself is beyond, ruling everything from within. So much like a body is different from the soul, but overall makes up one person, so too the world and living beings are distinct, but overall are still part of the oneness that is Brahman. The great Vedantins, Shankara, Ramanuja and Madhva all emphasize different statements of the Upanishads to validate their view of reality. Shankara focuses on those of absolute oneness, stating the differences we perceive are ultimately an illusion. Madhva emphasizes the statements that speak of absolute difference. Ramanuja, however, reconciles the two. Whilst agreeing that Brahman is all there is, he states that within this overall oneness there are distinctions. The souls and the world are part of Brahman's body. Ramanuja and numerous other theistic philosophers rely on the Upanishads to lay down the structural vision of reality. But it is in the Bhagavad Gita where we see the full personal nature of God. Here, the Brahman of the Upanishads is revealed as none other than Lord Krishna. The Puranas, such as the Bhagavad...
In that picture, you can almost hear, oh.
Yeah.
It's like with the sound that picture makes.
But to go even further and illustrate through the many pastimes of Krishna what a devotional relationship with Brahman looks like. The full nature of ecstatic divine love is built on the philosophical principles of the Upanishads. Devotion, therefore, is not some sentimental, ungrounded state. The loving relationship between God and devotee is constructed on the rational metaphysical inquiry of the ancient rishis. The Upanishads are the bedrock of all Hindu thought. Whether it is yoga, meditation, or temple worship, all of it has in some way come from these scriptures. Fundamentally, the rishis have made it clear we are divine beings and we can all experience this firsthand. It is this possibility of self-realization that so radically distinguishes the Dharmic traditions of India from Western religion. While there have been many mystics throughout history, it is only the Upanishads which have consolidated this mysticism into actual philosophy. The Upanishads show us that through inquiry into our own existence, we can know the magnitude of truth, and from there we can know the glory of God. Many thanks for listening.
Great video.
Yeah, shout out to Dharma Speaks, man. Whoever does them, they make a fantastic video and well explained. There's a couple points in that video I was wondering about. One was that, like, you mentioned that the Upanishads are at the end of the Vedas, and that the first three texts there that were laid out, I can't remember the names, were all about ritual, all about the ritual. And I'm wondering, it's like, can you skip the ritual aspect? Can you jump straight to the Upanishads and then just like absorb the knowledge, or is the knowledge that you're absorbing like, you know, attained through all the rituals that are explained in the first thing? Which also then got me thinking to, like, I saw all the pictures of everyone meditating, and I was thinking, I was like, what if I don't want to meditate? What if I don't want to do that? And like, is it possible to acquire, like, what if we could naturally like absorb these things and like get to a point where we evolve technology to be like, all right, you've now awakened.
Remember the newest term coined on this show, we are
yeah.
all subject to the hyperbalance. So there probably is a
hyperbalance.
way that you can get whatever you want super fast, but there's always a sacrifice to everything,
Yeah, yin
right?
and yang, yeah.
Even just advancement in its simplest conception,
Yeah.
there's a price to advancement. And so, but you know what it made me think of? It made me think of, I know a story somebody told me a long time ago of, they were just a normal person, probably came from a pretty disciplined background, everything like that. And when they were probably older than someone typically first tries something like this, they tried like a street drug.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing them afterwards, and they were like, I can't believe you can do that with chemicals. Like, you can make someone have, not a hallucinogen,
Yeah.
like a stimulant.
Yeah.
And they were like in a pill? They can make it, and that's not me advocating. I'm just pointing out that some of these pictures are like this, right?
Yeah.
And I only know my own experience. I only know the times that I've been like that, and I was full of cow crap. I was just ego. Like, if I just say that I'm peaceful, I'm peaceful.
Yeah.
And I say that judgily, but there is actually an element of truth to that.
Yeah.
You know, if you can, the term "fake it till you make it." There's a reality in there somewhere, but a lot of it's ego nonsense. But I hear the question you're making. You're curious because what are we gonna do? Is it important or not? It's more and more seeming like you could slice all this stuff up, or you could just effing take it.
Well, I've heard.
You know, I just don't want to. The day comes when I take this at face value and I talk about it at face value.
Yeah.
I don't want people to be confused and think I've sold out. No, if I'm doing that, it's because I went down the path of philosophy and realized it goes nowhere. Sometimes you just gotta take it and go and do it.
Yeah. I've heard some people say that, like, because of the whole reincarnation thing, that there are some people that there's not a lot of emphasis on the Upanishads part. It's more of like, just like some people devote themselves to like a life of giving and just being like a good person. That's it. And they don't like even do the philosophy part. They'll be like, I'll get it in the next life. This life, this life, I'm just gonna do my thing. And then there's probably someone out there who's like, in this life, I'm living just for me. I'm gonna smoke cigars and drive Ferraris, and I'll take care of that stuff in the next reality. But does that mean they come back as a toad in the next life?
An anal bead? But under Lord Balance, it got me thinking about sort of a similar thing last night. I was like sitting talking to my wife, and I'm like, imagine somebody, how can you make, and this is like messed up, but I was like, how can you make something good be bad using the laws of balance? And I imagine somebody that was like hyper like benevolent, hyper philanthropic, like, I noticed that there was a homeless person, a homeless problem, so I went out and I started feeding homeless people, right?
Yeah.
And then their numbers grew, and I was able to bring them to the point where they were able to get jobs and contribute to the society, off the streets and getting jobs. And you did that, and you did that, and you did that, till it was like, there's no jobs anymore left. You know what I mean? Like, what point would it tip and you would realize there was something that we were getting out of the thing and it getting to a point where they're like, stop helping the homeless people. Stop it. Like, I can't stop. I got to help everyone.
Yeah.
Where's that effing tipping point? And if there's a tipping point at all, then why do anything? Why do anything? And the answer is because you can't help it. You can't stop. You're going to do something. And so that should humble you. It should not inflate you like I just got inflated. If anything, it's like, ooh, time to get real humble.
Yeah. Well, guys, we talked enough on this one. Another great video. If you liked it, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and everyone, until next time, stay spiritual.